Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing on the topic that is Memorial Address to the Education Commission. This particular topic is also known as Hunter Commission. The idea behind this particular address is regarding the education policies which were created during the British rule by Mahatma Phule. Let's start understanding with the help of the article about the education policies which were addressed during the commissions. Before starting discussing about the exact idea of education policy, we will try and understand something about the author. The Memorial Address to Education Commission, also known as Hunter Commission, was written by Jyotirao Govindrao Phule, also popularly known as Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. He was born on 11th of April 1827. He is popularly known as an Indian social activist, thinker, anti-social caste reformer, and writer in Maharashtra. He and his wife were completely working to an extent level for the education of the women and the oppressed class people. His wife is also known popularly by the name Savitribai Phule. Phule started his first school education for the girls in the year 1848 in Pune, and he is also a follower of Satyashodhak Samaj. The idea of Phule was very simple, that is, to develop the education among the people of the country and to create in them well awareness for their livelihood. Let's understand something about the policy which was being created and it was being addressed to the Education Commission. We know amongst the variety of the roles which have been played by the social reformers in the India, Mahatma Phule's major role was regarding the education system in modern India. He wrote this particular memorial addressed to the Hunter Education Commission, which was in 1882. Understanding the background of this Education Commission, we can find that the British East India Company, which were there then present in the India, had established an education policy, not till 1813. By the 1813, the company had arranged few funds for promoting the education in the India states. Because of this particular education policy and this particular financial help which was funded by the government, only 67,569 students were getting education in certain institutes. Also, we find that around 1628 Christian missionaries had been started. At that time, Woods was one of the person who was there in the education policies, that is higher education policy, but he neglected complete the idea of primary education. And this was the problem which actually made Mahatma Phule to address this particular idea. This commission had then started complete giving the attention towards the educations of backward and primary education because of the memorial which was presented by Mahatma Phule. Mahatma Phule recorded his address to the Hunter Commission, which was later on published, and it was recorded almost a quarter years ago. In this document, the theory is adopted by the government that the education should be down from the upper class to the society to the mass, which was a complete Ethiopian idea. We can find that he further goes and asks a single example of the truth of his theory. He quotes that the higher class has kept the knowledge to themselves as a personal gift, not to be soiled by the contact of the ignorant vulgar. That means the education policy was only limited to the higher and the rich class people. It was not meant for the people who were poor and downtrodden in nature. This was not nothing else but the monopoly which was played by the education system. For him, it was a welfare of riot of hearts, and of course the duty of the government to check about the abuses and the narrow loopholes which were there in the education policy. He also regarded the compulsory education, which is the primary education. He says, I think primary education of the mass should be made compulsory up to a certain age, say at least 12 years, because at that time the education was not available for each and every person. And for Mahatma Phule, every person, every child should get a basic education at least till the 12 years. He further notes that cultivating this kind of class of education will of course move on from the extreme poverty, and of course they will have a taste of learning. But now the people were lacking the taste of learning because of the financial problems. For this, Mahatma Phule further on gave a solution of inducing something called as scholarships and annual prizes, which would create a further taste of learning among the poor people and making the children an educated class. He also gave his ideas something about the indigenous schools and something about the higher schools also. During his memorial addressing something regarding to primary education, we find that he is mentioning more about the ideas of how the Molanas, Mahas, Mangs and Brahmins all should come together for the education. This could be also helped with the understanding of the teacher idea which he has presented. He says the teacher should be well qualified and active person. Rather, he should not be imbibing a particular caste and religion matter. Further, we find that Mahatma Phule mentions about the salary of the teacher also, so that if the school teacher or the schoolmaster is very much advanced in his salary and education, he will give a good kind of education to the students also. We also find that he is mentioning something about the public instructions which has to be followed in this particular case. The idea of this public education was that we find that during the time it was only the multiplication, Modi writing and reading and some religious pieces were taught. This particular idea of teaching something in a very typical manner was then should be removed according to Mahatma Phule. According to him, the teacher generally should have a particular society, should not come from a particular society. Rather, he should look all the students with an equal status of all caste and creed. Also, he said that the basic qualification of the teacher should be at least a 6th standard pass in the vernacular language, so that he will be able to teach his students with a good opinion and options. Also, he said that government can stop the aids, that is funding of the schools where you cannot get a certified teacher. But if any of the component teacher or any of the institute or school is providing the students with a component teacher, then the government should fund them with good kind of aids so that the school and the students will be profited because of it. Regarding the higher education, he says that the higher education is completely neglected in the part of the education system which was then created in the Hunter Commission. According to the writer, that is Mahatma Phule, he says that education is a very infancy and withdrawal of these higher education state aid, that means the funding which was removed from the higher education, could be injurious to the education policy, because withdrawal of these first aid might not be actually creating a problem for the people who are almost already rich or well educated, but it may create a problem to the middle class and the lower class people who cannot afford their education, that is higher education. Henceforth, at least the basic state aid should be provided to the higher education so that the people who are downtrodden or of lower class or middle class will get the primary education and then the higher education also. According to the writer, he says that the higher education and the primary education both are very much important for the government and the state India. According to him, in the conclusion, he says that he begs for the education committee to give at least a kind enough sanction for the female schools also, because it was then the very idea that only male class was being taught and the female were not at all allowed to have a study or education. This actually created a problem for the female class, as a result of which he completely wanted to give education to each and every person, each and every class, be it a boy or a girl. Henceforth, he concludes his idea regarding the at least spread of female primary education to liberate themselves.